Have you ever wondered if the ancient stone temples you see in history books aren't just buildings, but actual functioning machines?
It's a question that completely upends how we look at history. I mean, really, how we look at everything.
Right, because we are so conditioned to look at a piece of architecture, like a building or a skyscraper, and just expect simple utility.
Exactly. Walls keep the wind out, a roof stops the rain. We expect a building to just be a static object.
Yeah.
But what we are exploring today is, well, it's the absolute definition of a paradigm shift. We are not talking about places of mere congregation. We are talking about lost technology.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are undertaking a massive mission for you. We have this stack of source material, and we are piecing together this fascinating, almost unbelievable synthesis of ancient Vedic philosophy, Tamil Siddhar traditions, temple architecture manuals, and, wildly enough, modern quantum physics.
It's an incredible cross-section of disciplines.
It really is. And we're going to uncover what can only be described as a lost spiritual technology. We're looking at the premise that the human body, the vast universe, and these ancient stone temples are all built on the exact same energetic blueprint.
And we're going to decode how this forgotten science actually operated.
Yeah, and why the instruction manual was lost to the brutal march of history, and what it ultimately means for the future of humanity. Okay, let's unpack this.
So to even begin to understand how a stone building could act as a machine, we have to establish the foundational philosophy that drove the ancient architects in the first place.
Right, the core idea.
Yeah, there is a grand overarching concept in the Vedic tradition, and it's encapsulated in a Sanskrit phrase, Yat Pinde Tat Brahmande.
Yeah, Pinde Tat Brahmande.
Roughly translated, it means what is in the body is in the universe.
Which, what is in the body is in the universe. It sounds very poetic. Sounds like a beautiful metaphor for just feeling connected to nature.
It does sound like that, but we have to discard the idea that this was just poetry. The ancient texts intend this to be taken absolutely literally.
Literally.
Yes. If you look at the Purusha Sukta, which is this hymn from the ancient Yajur Veda, it actually describes the creation of the universe from a cosmic being.
Okay.
It states that the sun comes from the cosmic eye and the moon comes from the cosmic mind. It establishes a direct, non-metaphorical link between human physiology and celestial bodies.
So they aren't just saying you're a part of the universe.
No, they're saying the microcosm, meaning you, the listener, your human body, is an exact miniature replica of the macrocosm, which is the universe itself.
Which, again, sounds like beautiful mythology until you bring modern astrophysics into the conversation. Because when we actually look at what we are made of, it immediately brings to mind Carl Sagan.
Oh, absolutely. Sagan famously said, "We are made of star stuff." And as an astrophysicist, he was stating a literal chemical fact. I mean, the carbon that forms the basis of our cellular biology, the calcium that gives structure to our bones, the iron in our blood that makes it red.
None of that was made here.
Exactly. None of those elements were created here on Earth.
So how exactly did they get here then? Just for a quick refresher.
They were forged in the hearts of dying stars. During a supernova, when a massive star basically exhausts its nuclear fuel, it collapses under its own gravity.
And then just explodes.
Explodes with unimaginable force. And that explosion generates temperatures and pressures so extreme that it forces lighter elements to fuse into heavier ones, like iron and calcium.
So the star is basically a giant pressure cooker, making the ingredients for a human body.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. Those elements are then violently ejected across the cosmos, eventually coalescing into planets and ultimately into the food we eat and the bodies we inhabit. We are walking, breathing debris from ancient, violent cosmic events.
So the chemical connection is undeniable. We literally are star stuff.
Yeah.
But this concept of the body being an exact miniature of the universe goes far beyond just the chemical ingredients, right? It's about the physical structure itself.
It is. The parallels in structure are staggering. Think about the atomic level first. You have a nucleus composed of protons and neutrons in the center, with electrons orbiting around it in specific shells.
Right, like the classic atom diagram.
Exactly. That geometric layout is functionally identical to a solar system. The sun sits in the center, and the planets orbit around it. It is the same architectural blueprint, just expressed on vastly different scales.
But where this gets truly mind-bending is that study from the year 2020.
Oh, yes.
I know exactly what you're going to bring up, but I want you to walk us through the methodology of this because it is incredibly hard to wrap your head around at first.
I agree. So in 2020, an astrophysicist named Franco Vazza and a neurosurgeon named Alberto Folletti teamed up to conduct a really rigorous comparative quantitative analysis.
A neurosurgeon and an astrophysicist, not your usual pairing.
Right. But they took the neural network of the human brain, so this microscopic web of nearly 90 billion neurons and their trillions of connecting synapses,
Okay.
and then they compared it directly to the cosmic web.
Explain the cosmic web for us really quickly. What exactly is that?
When you zoom out far enough, the universe isn't just a random scattering of stars. Galaxies actually cluster together in massive structures, and they're connected by these invisible filaments of dark matter and extremely hot, diffuse gas.
So it looks like a giant network.
Yeah, it looks like a vast, three-dimensional spiderweb stretching across billions of light years. So Vazza and Folletti use computer models to map both the microscopic brain tissue and the light years wide universe.
Okay, so they have the two maps.
Right, and they analyze them using a metric called the clustering index, which measures how nodes in a network connect to their neighbors.
And what did they find when they ran the numbers?
They found an 80% structural similarity.
80%.
80%. The way galaxies cluster and connect through dark matter filaments is mathematically and structurally almost identical to the way neurons cluster and connect in the human brain.
That is just
The
wild.
node-to-node ratios, the way they exchange information, the distribution of matter versus empty space, it's the same blueprint.
The universe is structured like a giant brain.
Or your brain is a miniature universe. Yat pinde tat brahmande.
Man, that 80% similarity is just, it's profound.
Yeah.
But I want to push back on this a little bit, or at least try to get some clarity on the sheer scale of the emptiness involved here.
Sure, go ahead.
Because if we're looking at the atomic scale, an atom is famously 99.9% empty space.
Yes.
The nucleus is tiny, the electrons are tiny, and the rest is literally void. And then you look at the universe, and it is 99% dark energy, dark matter, and empty space.
That's correct.
The visible stuff, the stars and planets, that makes up barely 1%. So if I'm creating an analogy here, does that mean our bodies, the things we think of as solid flesh and bone, are really just walking, talking galaxies of nothingness?
From a purely physical quantum standpoint, yes. That is an incredibly accurate way to view it. You are a localized cluster of mostly empty space held together by energetic forces exactly like a galaxy.
It's hard to believe when I'm knocking on a wooden table.
I know, but the solidity you feel right now, the feeling of your feet on the floor or the device in your hand, it's an illusion.
Just an illusion.
It is just the electromagnetic repulsion between the outer electron shells of your atoms and the atoms of the object you're touching. They repel each other, and your brain interprets that energetic resistance as physical solidity.
Okay, so this brings up a massive question. If my body is just recycled stardust, and basically all of it is literally empty space, what is actually running the machine?
The driving force.
Yeah, if I am a galaxy of nothingness, what is the battery? What is the force that makes this specific cluster of void and stardust wake up, have a thought, drink a cup of coffee, and listen to a deep dive?
This is exactly where the ancient texts pivot from physical anatomy to bioenergetics. The Vedic texts view the physical body as inert matter. Left to its own devices, it's just a dead machine.
It needs power.
It requires an external power source, an energetic driver. In their terminology, this is the soul, or pure consciousness.
Now, there's an analogy from the Katha Upanishad that deals with this perfectly. Can you walk us through it?
I'd love to. The Katha Upanishad uses the profound analogy of a chariot. It describes the physical body, the bones, the flesh, the empty space we just talked about, as the chariot itself. It is the wood and the wheels.
Okay.
The intellect, your analytical mind, is the driver holding the reins. The senses are the horses pulling the chariot. But the soul, the Atman, is the master of the chariot. It is the owner riding in the back.
So without the master, the whole operation falls apart.
Exactly. Without the master, the chariot has no destination, no purpose. The driver has no one to take orders from. The master is the pure energy, the consciousness that sets the entire complex system into meaningful motion.
That makes a lot of sense.
And the Bhagavad Gita takes this even further, describing the soul as an indestructible, all-pervading energy. It explicitly states that this energy cannot be cut, it cannot be burned, it cannot be destroyed by water or withered by the wind.
Which immediately makes me think of high school physics.
Yes, the first law of thermodynamics, the law of conservation of energy.
Right. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred or changed from one form to another. It really feels like these ancient texts were describing the first law of thermodynamics thousands of years ago, just using the word soul or consciousness instead of energy.
That is a very apt comparison. And what is fascinating is how modern quantum physics is beginning to echo this ancient sentiment. Max Planck, who is universally recognized as the father of quantum mechanics, famously stated that he regards consciousness as fundamental and matter as derivative.
Explain what fundamental means in that specific context.
It means consciousness isn't an accident. In classical biology, the assumption is that if you put enough atoms together in the right order and wait long enough, eventually a brain forms.
Right, the evolutionary view.
Yeah, and that brain somehow secretes consciousness like a liver secretes bile. But Planck, through his work in quantum mechanics, realized that matter itself doesn't make sense without an observer.
The observer effect.
Exactly. He proposed that consciousness is the base reality of the universe. Matter is just what consciousness looks like when it physicalizes.
So the stardust is secondary, the consciousness is primary.
Precisely.
Has science ever actually tried to measure this primary life force? I mean, can we see the battery running the empty space?
Science has absolutely tried to measure it. If we look at the work of Fritz Albert Popp, a German biophysicist in the 1970s, he discovered something truly remarkable. He found that all living cells continuously emit tiny, ultra-weak particles of light.
Particles of light.
Yes, he called them biophotons.
Biophotons. Wait, our cells emit physical light, like literally glowing.
Yes. Using highly sensitive instruments called photomultiplier tubes, Popp was able to actually count these photons. He discovered that this light emanates primarily from the DNA within the cell nucleus.
That's insane.
And this light energy is coherent, much like a laser, and it's used for instantaneous cellular communication. It is literally how your body talks to itself at a quantum level, coordinating millions of chemical reactions per second, way faster than the nervous system ever could.
That is incredible. But how does that connect to the concept of the soul or the battery we're talking about?
Here is the crucial detail of Popp's discovery. This emission of highly structured, coherent light only happens while the organism is alive. At the exact moment of clinical death, there's sometimes a brief spike, and then the biophoton emission vanishes entirely. The light goes out, the physical matter, the DNA, the proteins, the stardust, it's all still there, but the light is gone.
Okay, so to synthesize this into a modern analogy, the food we eat, the oxygen we breathe, the water we drink, all of that is just the gas in the tank.
Yes, perfect.
It's processed by the mitochondria in our cells to make ATP, the chemical fuel. But the soul, this fundamental quantum consciousness, this biophotonic light, that is the actual ignition key that starts the engine.
Exactly.
Without the key, you just have a tank full of gas and a hunk of biological metal that isn't going anywhere.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The human body is a biological machine powered by a cosmic conscious spark. Now, if we accept this premise, if we truly internalize that a human being is a miniature universe powered by a primary indestructible energy, then the next leap the ancient architects took makes absolute logical sense.
They decided to build a macro version of this exact same machine, that out of stone.
Yes.
When we look at ancient stone temples, especially the massive complexes in South India, they look incredibly ornate. You see thousands of intricately carved statues, towering entryways, sprawling courtyards with massive pillars.
Very visually overwhelming.
A casual observer, or, a modern tourist, assumes it is just artistic expression, a tribute to the gods meant to look beautiful. But the ancient architecture manual sees something entirely different.
Yes, they do. The Agama Shastras. These are the highly technical, ancient blueprints and manuals for temple construction.
And what do they actually say?
Texts like the Manushalaya Chandrika and the Kamika Agama make it explicitly clear a temple is not art for the sake of art. It is anatomy.
Anatomy. So how exactly does a sprawling stone complex map onto human anatomy? It's kind of hard to visualize.
The foundational concept in the Agama Shastras is prasada purusha. This translates directly to the temple being a human body lying flat on its back on the earth.
Lying down, okay.
Yes. The entire layout from the outermost gates to the innermost sanctum is a precise anatomical and energetic blueprint.
I want to walk the listener through this blueprint step by step because it's fascinating. Imagine you are approaching one of these massive ancient temples. The very first thing you see is the main entrance tower.
Right, the Rajagopuram. It is typically massive, towering into the sky, covered in intricate sculptures. According to the anatomical blueprint, this represents the feet of the cosmic human.
The feet.
Yes, and this is why, culturally, devotees often touch the threshold of the entrance or prostrate completely at the gateway before proceeding. They are symbolically touching the feet of the divine body.
Then as you walk through that main entrance, you enter the first courtyard, and you see a very tall flagstaff.
The Dwajasambham. This tall, usually brass or copper-covered pole represents the human spine.
The spine, okay.
More specifically, it represents the Sushumna nerve, which in yogic anatomy is the central energy channel that runs straight up the spinal cord. Right past the flagstaff is the Balipitam, which translates to the sacrificial altar.
And what body part does the altar represent?
It corresponds to the navel. In ancient traditions, the navel is the center of worldly desires and ego. So, placing the sacrificial altar here is deeply symbolic. It is the place where a human being's lower desires and ego are meant to be metaphorically sacrificed or left behind before proceeding deeper into the body.
Okay, so you leave your ego at the navel, you keep walking inwards, and you enter the Mahamandapam, the great gathering hall. This large space represents the chest and the stomach area.
Correct.
You move further in, and the space narrows into the Ardhamandapam, the antechamber. This represents the neck. And finally, you reach the absolute center, the most sacred space, the Garbhagriha, the sanctum sanctorum.
And the Garbhagriha represents the head, the brain, the seat of higher consciousness. But the structural mapping doesn't just stop at physical organs. It aligns perfectly with the esoteric anatomy of the human energy system, too, the 7 chakras.
The energy centers running up the body.
Exactly. Starting from the entrance, the Rajagopuram is the Muladhara, the root chakra at the base of the spine. The altar is the Svadhisthana, the sacral chakra. The flagstaff represents the Manipura, the solar plexus. The main hall is the Anahata, the heart chakra. The narrow antechamber is the Vishuddha, the throat chakra. The entrance to the inner sanctum is the Ajna, the third eye.
Wow.
And finally, the roof of the sanctum, specifically the Kalasam, which are those pointed, highly conductive copper structures on the very top of the temple tower. They represent the Sahasrara, the crown chakra, reaching up and connecting into the cosmos.
It is a literal one-to-one mapping. Every single stone, every single distance between the pillars is mathematically calculated to mirror the human nervous system.
It's incredibly precise geometry.
But this brings me back to the idea of a machine. Because looking like a body is one thing, but functioning like one is another. I was trying to come up with a modern analogy for what this architecture actually does, and here's where it gets really interesting.
I'm all ears.
The best analogy I could come up with is a giant acoustic wireless charging pad for human bioenergy.
A wireless charging pad. I love that. Break down the physics of why you think that fits.
Well, let's look at the sanctum, the head of the temple. According to the manuals, it is always built as a dark, square room. There are rarely any windows.
True.
It is intentionally unventilated and usually lit only by a few oil lamps. From an architectural standpoint, that specific shape, the dense stone, and the lack of airflow basically turn the room into an exothermic container.
A thermal chamber, right.
Yeah, it captures the magnetic resonance of the earth below it and the thermal energy trapped inside it, and it amplifies it. So when a human being whose internal biomagnetic battery is drained by the stress, anxiety, and literal physical toll of daily life walks into this highly charged space, an energy transfer happens.
Yes.
Their body's biomagnetic field interacts with the immense concentrated field of the temple sanctum. The chakras align, the internal frequencies sync up, and the human battery is wirelessly recharged by the ambient environment.
That is an exceptionally accurate modern interpretation of what the Agama Shastras describe. The architecture is explicitly designed to capture, contain, and amplify terrestrial and cosmic energy. It is a generator. But establishing that the building is a generator leads us to the most critical and perhaps the most controversial question of our entire exploration today.
Right, because if the temple is a giant human body, and we've already established that the human body needs an ignition key, a soul, or a consciousness to actually function, what is the soul of a stone temple?
Exactly.
A building, no matter how geometrically perfect, doesn't possess consciousness. So how do you give a stone machine a soul to run it?
This is where we uncover the master secret of the ancient builders. Because if you ask 99% of people who visit these temples today what the source of the power is, they will point to the idol.
Right, the statue.
They believe the stone statue of the deity in the center of the sanctum is the literal source of the divine energy.
But according to the deep history we're looking at in the source material, that is fundamentally incorrect. The idol is just a medium. It is a conduit.
Yes.
To use another analogy, the idol is the screen of the television. It's where you focus your attention, but it is not the power cord plugged into the wall.
Precisely. To understand the true soul of the temple, we have to look beneath the floorboards. We have to look at what is buried underneath the idol.
Under the floor.
And this is a very specific two-part process. The first part is installing the physical hardware, the battery. Before a statue is ever placed into a sanctum, the architects perform an incredibly complex ritual called garbanasam.
What does that involve?
They dig a deep shaft directly beneath where the idol will sit. At the very bottom of this shaft, they place a yantra.
Yantra, okay.
A yantra is a highly precise geometric diagram, typically engraved on plates of copper, silver, or gold. These aren't just pretty shapes. They are mathematical patterns believed to resonate with specific cosmic frequencies.
Like circuit boards?
Exactly like circuit boards. And along with these metal plates, they bury specific herbs, grains, and the navaratnas, which are the 9 precious gemstones associated with planetary energies.
So they're building a capsule.
Yes, this entire buried capsule acts as a subterranean antenna. It is the physical hardware designed to draw magnetic energy up from the earth and cosmic energy down from the sky, funneling it directly into the stone idol above.
Okay, I can grasp that. That is the physical battery, the hardware. But hardware still needs a spark. It needs consciousness to turn it on. And this is the part of the history that I genuinely struggled with.
I know where you're going with this.
I have to push back on this because it sounds like pure science fiction.
You are referring to the Jiva Samadhi.
Yes. The shocking reveal in these texts. According to the sources, beneath the sanctums of the most powerful, most ancient temples, places like the massive Tanjore Big Temple built by the Chola dynasty or the famous Palani Murugan Temple, there's a human being buried there.
Yes.
A highly realized sage, a siddhar, or rishi, buried in a state of jiva samadhi. Come on.
I know it sounds...
You are telling me a biological human body sitting in the dirt under a stone floor is powering a massive architectural complex for 1,000 years. How does that not violate every single law of biology and physics we have?
I hear you.
It sounds like a myth designed to make the temple seem spooky or just, extra powerful.
I completely understand the skepticism. It sounds incredible, even impossible to the modern materialist ear. But to understand it, we must first understand what the state of Jiva Samadhi actually entails. This is not the burial of a dead body.
Walk me through the difference then.
When a normal human being dies, the biophotonic light we talked about earlier vanishes. The primary consciousness leaves the vehicle. Once that life force is gone, the physical cells succumb to entropy. They undergo rapid biological decay, broken down by bacteria and the environment.
Normal decomposition, right?
But a master yogi, a rishi who has spent a lifetime mastering the 8 limbs of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, and achieved absolute cellular control over their prana, their life force, does not die in the conventional sense. They enter a state called Nuvakalpa Samadhi.
They consciously decide to exit the physical world, like on purpose.
Yes. They sit in deep meditation, usually in a specially prepared subterranean pit. And through profound mastery of their nervous system, they pull their life force entirely inwards. Their heart rate drops to virtually 0. Their breathing ceases entirely.
They're not dead.
No, and this is the crucial distinction. Their cells do not decay. They essentially halt the biological clock.
So it's a form of extreme metabolic suspension, like a localized stasis.
From a biological perspective, yes. But from an esoteric perspective, it is much deeper. The yogic texts explain that humans possess multiple bodies. The physical flesh and blood body is called the stula body.
Okay, the stula body.
When a rishi enters Jiva Samadhi, the stula body remains intact in the earth, suspended. But their Karana body, the causal body, which is the pure, concentrated, energetic blueprint of their consciousness, remains anchored to that specific physical location.
Wait, so they don't dissolve their consciousness into the universe like we usually hear about? They trap it there intentionally.
They maintain a highly concentrated, localized spark of immense consciousness. Because they are no longer restricted by the needs of physical survival, eating, breathing, moving, 100% of their energy is dedicated to broadcasting a specific high-frequency consciousness.
So they just broadcast.
Yes, they become a permanent, massive magnetic field. They act as a spiritual nuclear reactor.
So this is the master secret. The beautiful stone idol that millions of people travel to see. The statues they pour milk and honey over are just the capstones.
Yes.
The actual power source, the conscious soul of the temple that transmits peace, healing, and energy to the devotees, is the immense stabilized consciousness of the rishi buried directly beneath it. The rishi is the ignition key running the machine.
Precisely. When you walk into one of these ancient spaces and you feel that sudden, inexplicable wave of peace, or the hairs on your arms stand up, you aren't feeling the vibration of a carved piece of granite.
Right.
You are stepping into the living, localized, energetic field of an ancient master.
This completely reframes the entire experience of walking into a historical site. It's wild. But it brings up a major logistical question for me regarding the architecture.
Okay, what is it?
If we have a highly advanced human consciousness acting as the reactor core buried beneath the floorboards of the inner sanctum, how does that energy actually move through the rest of the massive stone building?
Good question.
Because these temples are huge, they cover acres of land. How does the energy get from the center out to the far edges?
That leads us to the science of expansion, and an incredibly sophisticated concept that connects sound, architectural geometry, and physics. According to the texts, the temple doesn't just house the buried rishi.
Okay.
The entire stone temple becomes the rishi's expanded physical body.
I used the wireless charging pad analogy earlier, but I feel like a Wi-Fi router might be a better fit here.
A Wi-Fi router? Let's hear it.
The rishi in the center is the router, right? They don't have to leave the sanctum. Their signal, their consciousness, is broadcast through the highly conductive stone itself.
Yeah.
So if a person, a devotee who is completely overwhelmed by grief for the struggles of life, walks into the outer courtyard and just leans their forehead against a massive stone pillar, they are literally leaning on the rishi's expanded bone. And the energy transfer, that comforting frequency reset, happens instantly.
That is exactly the mechanism the texts describe. But to turn dead granite into a highly conductive transmitter of a living, conscious waveform, you need a catalyst. You cannot just build the stone and expect it to broadcast.
What's missing?
You need to establish ritam.
Ritam, the translation for that is cosmic order or cosmic rhythm, correct?
Yes. In the Rig Veda, ritam is the fundamental underlying rhythm of the universe. It is the invisible order that makes the planets orbit predictably, the reason the seasons change in sequence, the reason a healthy heart beats in a specific steady cadence.
Everything has a rhythm.
Exactly. When a human being is sick, physically or mentally distressed, their internal rhythm is chaotic. It is out of sync with ritam. Now, the stone temple, when it is newly built, is just static matter. To make it broadcast the rishi's healing, ordered ritam, you have to physically vibrate it.
And you vibrate it with sound, with mantras.
Exactly. And this is where we absolutely must discard the modern westernized idea of what a mantra is. A mantra is not just a prayer. It is not a wish you whisper to a deity.
Right. It's not like saying grace before dinner.
No. In the Vedic science, a mantra is a highly specific mathematical acoustic formula. It is governed by a science called chandas, which dictates the precise meter, pitch, duration, and syllable arrangement of the sound.
If we look at modern science, this connects directly to the field of cymatics.
Oh, absolutely.
For anyone who isn't familiar with it, cymatics is the visual study of sound. If you take a metal plate, cover it in fine sand, and run a specific sound frequency through the plate, the sand doesn't just bounce around randomly.
It creates a pattern.
Right. It instantly organizes itself into complex, beautiful geometric patterns. Different sound frequencies create different highly specific shapes. Sound literally dictates the arrangement of physical matter.
Apply that exact physical law to the macro structure of the temple. When the highly trained priests chant these precise, ancient acoustic formulas, the mantras, the sound waves hit the dense stone walls, the pillars, the copper elements, the idol.
The whole building is getting hit by the sound.
Yeah. Yes. The continuous, highly specific vibration physically alters the atomic behavior of the stone. Through cymatic resonance, the entire building locks into a specific frequency. It sheds its static nature and becomes a living waveform, oscillating in perfect harmony with the universal order.
So the stone building is quite literally vibrating at the exact frequency of universal peace, driven by the consciousness of the buried rishi.
Yes. The temple becomes a living entity. The mantra is the heartbeat. The ringing of the massive bronze temple bells and the blowing of the conch shell act as the nervous system impulses. The smoke from the homa, the sacred fire rituals, acts as the breath. The entire massive structure wakes up.
Which is a beautiful, awe-inspiring image. But practically speaking, it also sounds incredibly delicate. Because a machine that is constantly interacting with human beings is bound to get dirty.
That is the big vulnerability, yes.
If the temple is acting as a massive sponge, absorbing the chaotic energy of thousands of people every single day, how do you clean a spiritual machine?
The historical texts refer to this as the absolute necessity for spiritual detoxification. When thousands of humans visit these temples, they aren't just bringing their physical bodies, they're bringing their psychic baggage.
The emotional weight.
Grief, greed, profound guilt, deep anger, trauma. In quantum terms, they are leaving behind chaotic energy residue.
They're leaving their low-frequency quantum entanglement all over the high-frequency stone.
Precisely. And over time, if you have thousands of people continuously offloading their pain and chaotic energy, the temple's perfect Wedum gets disrupted. The texts state that the temple essentially catches a spiritual fever.
A spiritual fever.
It becomes toxic, the machine gets clogged.
So how do you cure the fever? Do you just chant more mantras to vibrate the dirt away?
The chanting is the first line of defense, yes. The texts describe the daily, rigorous Vedic chanting by the priests as an acoustic acid wash.
An acoustic acid wash. That's a great visual.
The high-frequency sound waves of the precise mantras physically shatter the low-frequency, chaotic thought forms left behind by the masses. It resets the cymatic rhythm of the space. But here is where we hit a massive philosophical and physical wall, one that the ancient architects were acutely aware of.
The physics problem we talked about earlier. The law of conservation of energy.
Exactly.
Because if energy cannot be created or destroyed, then those mantras aren't destroying the negative energy, they are just dislodging it from the stone. So where does all that heavy, dark, chaotic human karma actually go?
It cannot simply vanish into nothingness. It has to be absorbed. It has to be processed and grounded by a conscious entity. And this reveals the terrifying, awe-inspiring, and profoundly sacrificial role of the ancient Vedic priests.
Wait, the priests weren't just there to recite words. They were the filtration system.
They were human amplifiers and spiritual fire. According to the karmic laws detailed in the ancient texts, the negative karma, the sins and chaotic energy offloaded by the masses, is absorbed directly by the priests themselves.
I took it on.
They willingly take it into their own energetic bodies.
That sounds like a death sentence. If they're absorbing the concentrated pain, trauma, and greed of thousands of people, how do they survive that? Why doesn't it just destroy them?
To survive it, these priests were historically bound by unimaginably strict rules of conduct and purity. They had to ensure they remained a pure conduit, a hollow tube, and not a container.
How do you do that?
To do this, they had to maintain absolute, unwavering ego death.
Because if you have an ego, if you have a strong sense of I or mine, that negative energy has something to stick to. It has a hook to grab onto.
Exactly. If the priest harbors even a shred of personal greed, anger, or pride, the heavy karma they absorb from the devotees will attach to that impurity. It will magnify it, eventually destroying the priest, usually manifesting as severe physical disease or madness.
That is terrifying.
To prevent this, historical texts mandated that temple priests could own absolutely no land. They could generate no outside income or wealth. They were required to survive solely on the simple food offered at the temple.
Owning nothing.
By owning nothing, desiring nothing, and possessing zero worldly ambition, they became energetically transparent.
So the negative energy flowed into them, but because there was no ego for it to stick to, it was burned up by the heat of their intense spiritual purity, what they call tapas, and safely grounded into the earth.
Yes, the level of personal sacrifice required to maintain this system was absolute.
Now, there's a specific detail in the source material about the spiritual goals of these priests that genuinely stopped me in my tracks.
The part about mukti.
Yes. Because if you know anything about Eastern philosophies, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, the ultimate goal of all this meditation, purity, and rigorous practice is mukti, enlightenment, liberation.
Right, escaping the cycle.
The goal is to escape the painful cycle of birth and death, reincarnation, so you never have to suffer in the physical world again.
Yes. Mukti is the ultimate highest goal for the individual soul in these traditions. But the deep history reveals a stunning paradox. The highest, truest temple priests of this ancient era actively refused mukti.
They did all the work, achieved the purity required for heaven, and then just said no.
They intentionally rejected liberation. Why? Because if they achieve mukti and merge their consciousness completely with the infinite divine, they can no longer return to the physical earth.
They're gone.
Right. They can no longer serve as the filtration system for the pain of the people. So these priests would intentionally perform small actions to generate just enough binding karma to ensure they would be endlessly reborn back into the physical realm.
Back into the role of the priest.
Back into the temple to continue absorbing the suffering of humanity.
It is the ultimate bodhisattva ideal. They choose to stay inside the burning building forever, just to help everyone else get out. When you step back and look at this entire interconnected system, the buried rishi acting as the nuclear core, the cymatically vibrating stone architecture broadcasting the healing frequency, the utterly selfless priests filtering the toxic waste, you realize this wasn't just a religion as we understand it today.
Not at all.
It was an incredibly delicate, highly engineered, massive infrastructure.
It was a full energetic ecosystem.
But an infrastructure of this immense scale doesn't just run itself. It requires massive physical resources, intense protection, and complex administration.
Yeah.
So who was managing this? Who was paying for millions of tons of granite to be moved and carved?
This brings us to the geopolitical reality of the ancient world. The system we are describing required the backing of empires. According to the historical text we are examining, in the pre-Bhakti era, before religion became more democratized and simplified, these massive temple machines were managed by a very specific trinity of power.
The Devaraja cult.
Yeah.
The concept of the god king.
Yes. These early, highly advanced temples were known as Palipadi temples. And the trinity of power that managed them consisted of three distinct entities.
Okay, let's break them down.
First, you had the buried rishi, or guru, who acted as the silent, limitless, stationary power source in the center. Second, you had the king. And third, you had the queen.
Wait, the king and queen were physically buried in the temples as well.
In the Palipadi tradition, yes. The king's ultimate life goal, his supreme duty as a ruler, was not just to win wars, but to construct one of these massive temple machines under the strict guidance of his guru, the rishi. When the king and queen eventually died, their physical bodies were buried within the temple complex, often right alongside or in close proximity to the central sanctum housing the guru.
Let me make sure I understand the mechanics of this trinity because it's complex.
Yeah.
You have the guru's pure realized wisdom generating the massive power from the center.
Yes.
And the king and queen's subtle bodies, their energetic ghosts essentially, are acting as the active administrators of the temple. So the rishi is the silent battery, but the king and queen are the ones managing the daily flow of energy, actively answering the prayers of their subjects and maintaining the structural integrity of the empire's spiritual core even after death.
Exactly. It was an unbreakable, eternal alliance of spiritual wisdom and temporal authority. It ensured that the king's protection of his people extended far beyond his physical lifespan.
That is a wild way to run an empire.
It was highly effective. And what is truly fascinating about this from a historical perspective is that this wasn't just a localized phenomenon isolated to South India. The great Tamil empires, particularly the Cholas, realized the sheer stabilizing power of this nuclear reactor blueprint, and they actively exported it across the globe.
They franchised the spiritual technology. And when you look at the historical examples of where this technology went, it is staggering. We are talking about some of the greatest, most mysterious architectural wonders of Southeast Asia.
Let's look at the concrete evidence. Consider Angkor Wat in Cambodia. It is recognized today as the largest religious monument in the world. Modern history books often view it vaguely as a grand tomb or a massive temple dedicated to the god Vishnu.
Right, that's what you always read.
But if we view it through the lens of the Agama Shastras and the texts we are exploring today, it is a massive, meticulously engineered Palipadi temple. It was built by King Suryavarman II.
So he was building a machine.
He wasn't just building a pretty monument. He was constructing his own massive spiritual amplifier, a machine designed specifically to house his causal body and his guru's energy after his physical death, stabilizing his empire through geometric resonance.
And you see the exact same thing at the Bayon Temple, also in Cambodia. Anyone who has seen pictures of this place knows how striking it is. It has these massive stone towers with giant, serene human faces carved into all four sides of the pillars.
Yes, the Bayon faces.
The history books say it was built by King Jayavarman VII. And those faces are his face. The temple literally is his expanded physical body. He built his consciousness into the spiritual machine of his empire.
We see the identical architectural and energetic blueprint again at Prambanan in Indonesia. No matter where these empires expanded, across vast oceans, deep into dense jungles, they painstakingly recreated this exact geometric stone amplifier.
The same exact trinity.
Always. They buried the guru's wisdom, the king's authority, and the queen's compassion in a triangular formation to create a stabilized, powerful, energetic grid over their vast territories.
Okay, so this brings us to a massive historical contradiction. I mean, if this technology was so advanced, so globally dominant, and so incredibly effective at maintaining cosmic order and empowering empires, why is it completely forgotten today?
That is the big question.
Why do we look at Angkor Wat or the Bayon or the Tanjore Big Temple and just see them as beautiful tourist spots for taking photos or generic places of worship? Where did the instruction manual go? How did we lose the science?
According to the historical texts, we are looking at the fall of the machine. Like any complex system that relies entirely on human purity and absolute selflessness, it is profoundly vulnerable to entropy.
The human element.
Yes. But in this case, it wasn't the physical entropy of the stone walls crumbling. It was the spiritual entropy of the human ego. The system became corrupted from the inside out.
And it started with the priests. The filtration system failed. We established earlier that they had to own no land, have zero wealth, and maintain absolute ego death to survive absorbing the karma. But human nature is a powerful force. Eventually, they lost that purity.
According to the historical texts we are examining, the priestly class began to desire the very things they were sworn to reject. They began to desire land, hoarded wealth, and political influence.
They wanted power.
In Vedic terminology, the Brahmin class, the spiritual guardians of the technology, began adopting Kshatriya traits. They lusted after the power of the warriors and the kings.
And the kings, rather than stopping it, saw an opportunity. They formed a dark alliance with the corrupt priests. Instead of the temple functioning as a free, open healing center for the masses to synchronize with cosmic order, it was transformed into a tool for mass exploitation.
It was a tragic shift.
The priests began telling the common people, "You must pay us exorbitant sums of money for these elaborate, heavy rituals, or the gods will curse your family." They monopolized the spiritual technology and weaponized it to extract heavy taxes and blind obedience.
It became a system of spiritual extortion, but whenever there is an extreme, prolonged imbalance of power and justice, the universe's natural balancing mechanism inevitably steps in. You cannot suppress the human spirit indefinitely. And so the global rebellion began.
This is where history takes a massive, fascinating pivot. Because this rebellion wasn't just a peasant uprising with swords and pitchforks. It was a profound intellectual and spiritual revolution. In the Indian subcontinent, the source material notes this rebellion took the form of Buddhism and Jainism.
It is essential to understand why these new philosophies rose to such immense prominence so quickly, according to these historical readings. They were a direct, necessary response to this corrupt, exploitative priestly class.
What do they offer instead?
Buddhism and Jainism offered a radical, liberating new path, direct access to enlightenment. They taught that you do not need intermediaries, you do not need expensive, bloody animal sacrifices,
Right.
you do not need exclusive access to a locked inner sanctum, and you do not need to be bound by oppressive caste systems. They fundamentally democratized spiritual liberation.
Now, and we're just reporting on the historical perspective provided in these sources here, this wave of simplified, direct spirituality was so powerful that it didn't just stay in India, it traveled rapidly along the Silk Road.
Yes, it spread globally.
The historical analysis shows how this massive philosophical shift contributed to the fall of paganism in Europe, which had its own entrenched, corrupt systems of intermediary priests and demanding sacrifices. This entire global movement paved the way for the meteoric rise of the simplified, monotheistic religions, primarily Christianity and Islam.
Which is a massive historical shift.
Again, just conveying the ideas from the text, these religions also offered a much more direct, personal relationship with a single universal creator, effectively sweeping away the old, complex, and corrupted hierarchical structures of the ancient world.
Now, if we look specifically back at South India, the source material details how the old temple system managed to survive this massive global revolution, but only at a tremendous, tragic cost.
How did they survive?
As Buddhism and Jainism gained massive ground, offering freedom to the oppressed masses, the ancient Vedic temple system was on the verge of total collapse and abandonment. To save the physical structures from being destroyed, a massive counter-revolution occurred from within.
The Bhakti movement.
Yes, the Nayanmars and the Alvars, the great passionate poet saints of South India, they recognized that the esoteric, highly scientific, and heavily restricted temple system had completely alienated the common people. So they executed a brilliant pivot.
What did they do?
They utilized the sheer emotive power of Tamil music, deeply emotional poetry, and intense personal devotion, which is bhakti. They used this passionate devotion to break down the rigid caste barriers that the corrupt priests had built. They threw the doors open and invited everyone back into the temples.
Which, on a human level is a beautiful story of inclusion. It physically saved the structures from ruin, but there was a massive tragic trade-off. To make the temples accessible, simple, and acceptable to the rapidly changing world, they had to be completely rebranded.
They lost their original purpose.
They went from being highly specific spiritual nuclear reactors powered by the precise physics of a buried rishi and the administrative ghosts of an ancient king to being viewed merely as generic devotional places of worship.
The deep, highly technical scientific knowledge of the Agama Shastras, the intricate mechanics of cymatics and atomic resonance, the precise karmic substitution required by the priests, the esoteric reality of the Jiva Samadhi, all of this incredibly advanced knowledge was deliberately hidden by the few remaining true masters, or it was simply forgotten as the generations passed.
It just faded away.
The great temple machine was powered down to a mere idle state. The instruction manual was lost.
So we are left with the massive physical hardware, but we completely forgot how the software works. Which brings us ultimately to the modern day. We are living in the direct aftermath of this massive global historical amnesia.
We really are.
We are surrounded by fractured institutional religions, constantly fighting over whose specific version of God is the correct one, often using terrible violence and rigid exclusivity to prove their point. So the question is, where do we go from here? Can we ever find the instruction manual again? Can we get the machine back online?
The historical and philosophical material we are analyzing concludes with a profound synthesis. It basically offers a prophecy for the future of humanity. And the argument presented here is that the current era of religious exclusivity, the entrenched mindset of my God is real and yours is fake, is inherently mathematically unsustainable.
It just doesn't work long term.
It leads only to a massive, destructive clash of civilizations. If humanity continues to cling to institutional religion in its current fractured and dogmatic form, we face a very dire future.
But the texts offer a way forward. And importantly, it is not about regressing. It's not about going back to the past, digging up the old kings, or reinstating the rigid hierarchy.
No, absolutely not.
The profound suggestion here is that the future of human evolution lies in the perfect intersection of modern quantum physics and the ancient philosophy of Advaita Vedanta.
Advaita Vedanta is the supreme philosophy of non-dualism. It is the profound realization that there is absolutely no separation between the creator and the created.
They are the same thing.
The ultimate truth of the universe, which our most advanced quantum physics and unified field theories are now mathematically approaching, is summarized flawlessly in a single Sanskrit phrase, Aham Brahmasmi.
Aham Brahmasmi. I am the universe.
Exactly. I am Brahman. There is no external... priests, and there is absolutely no need for fear.
We are the divine spark.
Every single human being, regardless of their background, race, or religion, is a temporary physical manifestation of the exact same singular divine cosmic spark. We are all the universe experiencing itself subjectively from billions of different vantage points.
So if we achieve that realization, if we evolve past the need for fear-based religion, what happens to these massive ancient temples? Do we just abandon them as beautiful relics of a forgotten, obsolete science? Do they just become museums?
On the contrary, the material proposes a glorious new era for these structures. Once humanity outgrows the need for them to be places of fear, authority, or rigid transactional rituals, their true, original acoustic and energetic architecture will be utilized once again.
That's amazing.
Stripped of the dogmatic clutter that corrupted them, they will be recognized for what they truly are. They will become global meditation vortices.
Global meditation vortices. I love that concept. So instead of going to a temple to beg for personal favors or to offer blind obedience out of fear of punishment, humanity will gather in these spaces, these giant, mathematically perfect thermal and cymatic chambers, and use them for their original, scientifically intended purpose.
To synchronize. To establish freedom on a planetary scale. When humanity sits in these ancient spaces, meditating together, radiating pure, silent frequencies of unity, peace, and non-dual awareness, that profound, unified resonance will essentially reawaken the slumbering energy of the rishis buried beneath.
The routers get turned back on.
The massive energetic grids of these temples will come back online. But this time, they won't be powered to protect the borders of a single king or empire. They will activate to elevate the consciousness of the entire planet. The temple ultimately is just a perfect mirror reflecting our own collective state of being.
Which brings us beautifully right back to where we started this entire journey. Usually when we look at a building or when we look at an anatomical diagram of our own bodies, we see simple binary functional mechanics, just bone, just stone, just empty space.
Right, the surface level.
But if we peel back the layers of history, if we truly engage with the lost science of our ancestors and marry it to the cutting edge of our quantum physics, we realize we are so much more.
We are part of a vastly intelligent, conscious continuum.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible deep dive. We've journeyed through the explosive birth of stars, the esoteric architecture of the soul, the staggering sacrifice of the ancient priests, and the ultimate future of human consciousness. And we want to leave you with a final thought to ponder, something to carry with you and explore long after this audio ends.
The macrocosm and the microcosm. Yat pinde tat brahmande.
Exactly. If the ancient builders were right, and your physical body, with all its 99.999% empty space, is literally an exact, functioning, energetic miniature of the universe, what kind of cosmic energy are you broadcasting into the world right now just by the thoughts you are thinking?
Until next time.